Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Aurora's dawn and watched the stars. The ship moved through deep space like a silver needle through black cloth. 200 humans lived and worked inside the metal walls of the exploration vessel. They had been away from Earth for 6 months now, looking for new worlds and new life among the distant stars. "Captain, I'm getting those strange readings again," said Lisa Baker from her science station. She was the ship's chief science officer, a woman with short brown hair and tired eyes. For 3 weeks, her instruments had been picking up something odd in space. Energy patterns that made no sense. Signals that seemed to come from nowhere. Jake walked over to her station. The screens showed lines and numbers that danced across the displays. "Same as before?" he asked. "Stronger this time," Lisa said. She pointed to a red line that jumped up and down. "Whatever it is, we're getting closer to it." Pete Collins looked up from his engineering station. He was a big man with strong hands that were always dirty from working on the ship's engines. "Captain, the quantum drive is acting strange too. The power levels keep changing for no reason." Jake felt worried. The quantum drive was what let them travel faster than light. Without it, they would be stuck in deep space, too far from Earth to ever get home. "Can you fix it?" "I'm trying," Pete said. "But it's like something is pulling at the drive from outside the ship." Navigator Helen Woods called out from her position near the front of the bridge. She was young, maybe 25, with blonde hair, tied back in a tight knot. "Captain, the star charts are wrong." "What do you mean wrong?" Jake asked. Helen's fingers moved across her computer screen. "The stars aren't where they should be. None of them match our charts. It's like we're in a completely different part of space." Rick Torres, the communications officer, tried his radio equipment. He was a thin man with dark hair who spoke 4 languages. "I can't reach Earth Command," he said. "I can't reach anyone. All I get is static on every channel." Jake felt his heart beat faster. Something was very wrong. "All stop," he ordered. "Cut the engines." The ship slowed down until it hung still in space. Through the big window at the front of the bridge, Jake could see stars that looked strange and foreign. None of the patterns were right. The bright star that should have been in front of them was gone. The red giant that should have been too. Their left was nowhere to be seen. "Lisa, run a full scan," Jake said. "I want to know where we are." Lisa's fingers flew across her controls. Numbers and images filled her screens. After 10 minutes, she looked up with fear in her eyes. "Captain, according to these readings, we're about 50,000 light-years from Earth." The bridge went quiet. Everyone stared at Lisa. 50,000 light-years meant they were farther from home than any human had ever been. It would take them hundreds of years to get back, even with the quantum drive. "That's impossible," said Amy Scott, the first officer. She was a tall woman with red hair who had been Jake's friend for 10 years. "The quantum drive can't jump that far. Nothing can." "The readings don't lie," Lisa said. "We're in unknown space. Look at this." She put an image on the main screen. It showed a huge structure in the distance, bigger than any space station humans had ever built. It was made of crystal that sparkled like diamonds. Ships moved around it like insects around a flower. "Those aren't human ships," Pete said. Jake studied the image. The ships were long and thin, made of the same crystal as the big station. They moved in perfect lines, like they were controlled by one mind. "How many ships?" he asked. 50 that I can count," Helen said. "Maybe more behind the station." "Any signs they've seen us?" Jake asked. Rick shook his head. "No communications directed at us, but they're talking to each other on frequencies I've never heard before." Dr. Carl Johnson came onto the bridge. He was the ship's doctor, an older man with gray hair and kind eyes. "Captain, the crew is asking questions. They know something's wrong. What should I tell them?" Jake thought for a moment. His people deserved to know the truth. "Tell them we're exploring new space. Tell them We're making first contact with an alien civilization. Don't mention how far we are from Earth. Not yet. Should we try to talk to them? Amy asked, pointing at the alien ships on the screen. We have two, Jake said. We need to know where we are and how to get home. But we go slow and careful. Lisa, keep scanning. I want to know everything about these aliens. Pete, get the quantum drive ready in case we need to run. Rick, see if you can figure out their language. What if they're hostile? Amy asked. Jake looked at the crystal ships on the screen. They were beautiful, but alien, nothing like human technology. Then we deal with that when it happens. But right now, they're our only hope of getting home. The Aurora's dawn moved slowly toward the alien station. In the distance, the crystal ships continued their perfect dance around their sparkling home. Jake watched them and wondered if he was leading his crew to salvation or destruction. Either way, there was no choice. They were alone in unknown space, 50,000 light-years from home, with only aliens for company. The phantom ship Aurora's dawn had appeared in alien space. Soon, everything would change. The alien ships moved like angry wasps around a disturbed nest. Captain Jake Morrison watched from the bridge as 12 crystal vessels broke away from the main group and flew straight toward the Aurora's dawn. Their ships were beautiful but frightening, made of clear material that caught the light from nearby stars and threw it back in rainbow colors. They're fast, said Helen Woods from her navigation station. Faster than anything we've ever built. Weapons? Jake asked. Lisa Baker checked her instruments. I'm reading energy signatures I don't understand. But yes, Captain, they have weapons. Big ones. The lead alien ship was 3 times longer than the Aurora's dawn. It looked like a giant crystal needle, with smaller crystals growing from its sides. As it got closer, Jake could see movement inside the clear walls. The beings that lived there were tall and thin, made of the same crystal material as their ships. Incoming transmission, said Rick Torres. They're trying to talk to us. Put it on screen, Jake ordered. The main display filled with the image of an alien face. It was beautiful in a cold way, like ice sculpture. The being had no mouth that Jake could see, but somehow it spoke. The words came out as music, high and low notes that meant nothing to human ears. Can you translate? Jake asked Rick. I'm trying, Rick said. His computer worked hard to find patterns in the alien language. I think they're asking who we are and why we're here. Jake stepped forward. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human ship Aurora's Dawn. We come in peace. We're lost and need help getting home. The alien's crystal face changed color from blue to red. More musical sounds came from the speakers. Rick's computer tried to translate, but only a few words came through clearly. Primitive, inferior, capture. That doesn't sound good, said Amy Scott. Suddenly, the Aurora's dawn shook hard. Warning lights flashed red all over the bridge. They're pulling us in with some kind of tractor beam, said Pete Collins from engineering. I can't break free. All hands to battle stations, Jake ordered, but he knew it was hopeless. The alien ships surrounded them like sharks around a wounded fish. The Aurora's dawn was strong, but it was just one ship against many. Within an hour, they were prisoners. The alien ships forced them to dock with the huge crystal station. Jake could see through the clear walls as armed aliens waited for them. The beings wore no clothing that he could see. Their crystal bodies sparkled with internal light. They want us to come aboard their station, Rick said, listening to the alien voices. They say they won't hurt us if we cooperate. Do we have a choice? Amy asked. Jake looked around his bridge at the people who trusted him to keep them safe. Not really, but we stick together. Nobody goes anywhere alone. The aliens who met them at the airlock were even stranger up close. They moved without making sound, their crystal feet clicking softly on the metal floor. The leader was taller than the others, with dark blue crystal skin and what looked like silver veins running through his transparent body. I am Veltar, the alien said. His voice came from somewhere inside his crystal chest, deep and cold, like winter wind. You will come with me. Jake and his senior officers followed the crystal beings through corridors that looked like the inside of a giant gemstone. Everything sparkled and reflected light. The walls themselves seemed alive, pulsing with soft colors. They were brought to a huge room where more aliens waited. In the center sat the biggest crystal being Jake had ever seen. This one was pure white, like fresh snow, and twice as tall as a human. Light moved through his body like lightning through clouds. I am Archon Zixahol, the giant alien said, ruler of this sector of the Zephyrian Empire. You are in my space without permission. We didn't mean to come here, Jake said. We're lost. We just want to go home. The Archon made a sound like breaking glass. Jake realized it was laughter. Home. You are primitive creatures from some backward world. You belong to the Empire. Now, we're free beings, Amy said, her voice strong and angry. We belong to no one. More glass-breaking laughter from the aliens around the room. Free, said the Archon. Look around you, small creatures. This is the Zephyrian Empire. We rule 1,000 worlds. We have enslaved 100 different species. You are nothing special. Jake felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept his voice. Come, what do you want with us? Entertainment, said Warcast Veltar. Your ship is primitive, but interesting. Your people will make good specimens for study. Some of you will work in our mines. Others will be kept for experiments. And some, said the Archon with cruel pleasure, will die for the amusement of the Empire. We will broadcast your execution across all our worlds. Let other primitive species see what happens when they enter our space uninvited. Dr. Carl Johnson stepped forward. You can't do this. We're explorers, not criminals. You exist, said the Archon. That is crime enough for inferior beings. Guards surrounded Dr. Johnson and 5 other humans. Jake tried to stop them, but crystal weapons appeared in alien hands, weapons that hummed with deadly energy. Don't fight them, Jake told his people. Not yet. As the guards led the prisoners away, Jake met Dr. Johnson's eyes. The old doctor nodded slightly. He understood. Wait for the right moment. Don't give up hope. The remaining humans were put in a holding area that looked like a crystal cave. The walls were clear, so the aliens could watch them like animals in a zoo. Jake sat with his remaining crew and tried to think of a plan. Captain, said Nina Bell, a young communications specialist with bright green eyes. I've been listening to their radio traffic. I think I'm starting to understand their language. What are they saying? Jake asked. They're planning something big, Nina said. A broadcast to their whole empire. They're going to execute you and the other senior officers in front of billions of aliens. They want to show everyone what happens to species that don't bow down. To them, Jake felt cold inside, but he kept his voice steady. How long do we have? 3 days, Nina said. They're calling it the Festival of Dominance. Amy sat down beside Jake. We need to get out of here. I know, Jake said. But how? We're outnumbered 1,000 to 1. Sue Martinez, one of the engineers, spoke up. She was a small woman with dark hair and quick hands. I saw their power systems when they brought us in, crystal-based, but the energy flows are different from anything we use. Maybe I can find a weakness. Do it, Jake said, but be careful. We get one chance at this. Through the clear walls of their prison, Jake could see alien ships coming and going from the station. The Zephyrian Empire was vast and powerful, but they had made one mistake. They thought humans were just another weak species to be enslaved. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Dr. Lucy Adams pressed her face against the crystal wall of the holding cell where the aliens kept the captured humans. She was the ship's expert on alien life, a woman with short black hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. For 2 days, she had watched their crystal captors, learning their ways. "They're not as perfect as they think," she whispered to Captain Jake Morrison. Jake moved closer. "What do you mean?" "Look at how they move," Lucy said. "See how they all walk in the same rhythm. And when one speaks, the others listen with their whole bodies. They're connected somehow. Their crystal structure lets them share thoughts and feelings. That makes them stronger," said Amy Scott. "Maybe," Lucy said. "But it also makes them weak. If something disrupts that connection, they could all be affected at once." Sue Martinez crawled over from where she had been studying the power systems. "In the walls. Dr. Adams is right. I've been watching their technology. Everything runs on vibration patterns through the crystal. Change the vibration, change everything." Nina Bell looked up from the corner where she had been listening to alien radio traffic. "The broadcast starts in 6 hours. They're bringing Captain Morrison and the other officers to the main execution chamber." Jake felt his heart beat faster. In 6 hours, he would be dead, killed, for the entertainment of an empire that saw humans as nothing more than insects. But maybe that wasn't the most important thing. Maybe his death could serve a purpose. "Nina, can you tap into their broadcast system?" he asked. "I think so," she said. "Why?" "Because if I'm going to die, I want to say something first. Something that every enslaved species in this empire will hear." Tony Garcia, the security chief, shook his head. "Captain, we should be planning an escape, not planning your speech." Tony was a tough man with scars on his hands from many fights. He had been a soldier before joining the crew, and he thought like a soldier. But Jake knew that sometimes words could be stronger than weapons. "We'll do both," Jake said. "But first, I need to know what Dr. Adams discovered about their weakness." Lucy explained what she had learned. Their crystal bodies vibrate at specific frequencies. Those vibrations let them communicate and share power. But human voices produce sound waves they can't make themselves. If we could amplify the right frequencies, we could disrupt their entire system, Sue finished. Make their own strength, work against them. Dan Foster spoke up from the back of the cell. He was the ship's sound engineer, responsible for all the audio systems on the Aurora's Dawn. "I know sound," he said. "If you can get me access to their communication array, I can turn it into a weapon." "It won't be easy," Tony said. "They have guards everywhere." "We only need a distraction," Jake said. "When they take me to the execution chamber, that's when you make your move." 6 hours later, crystal guards came for Jake and 3 of his officers. They were led through corridors filled with aliens who had come to watch the show. Jake saw dozens of different species, all enslaved by the Zephyrian Empire. Some looked like giant insects. Others were covered in fur or scales. All of them had the same look in their eyes, the dead stare of creatures who had given up hope. The execution chamber was huge, with crystal walls that stretched up like a cathedral. Millions of aliens watched from galleries that circled the room. At the center stood a platform where Jake and his officers were forced to kneel. Archon Zixhol rose from his throne. His white crystal body blazed with light as he spoke to the watching empire. "Behold, the fate of those who dare challenge Zephyrian rule. These primitive creatures thought they could enter our space as equals. Now they will die as examples." Jake felt the alien weapon touch the back of his neck. In a few seconds, he would be dead. But Nina had managed to connect to the broadcast system. His words would reach every corner of the empire. "Wait," Jake said, his voice carrying through the chamber. "Before you kill me, let me speak." The Archon laughed like breaking glass. "Speak then, primitive creature. Let your last words amuse us." Jake stood up slowly. He looked out at the millions of watching aliens, most of them slaves like he was about to become. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the human ship Aurora's Dawn. I speak not to our captors, but to every enslaved being who can hear my voice." The chamber grew quiet. Even the Zephyrians seemed curious about what this primitive creature would say before dying. "They call us primitive," Jake continued. "They say we're inferior, but I've seen something they haven't. I've seen free beings choose to risk everything for each other. I've seen people work together not because they're forced to, but because they believe in something bigger than themselves." In the galleries, some of the enslaved aliens leaned forward. Jake could see interest in their eyes where before there had been only emptiness. "Freedom isn't primitive," Jake said, his voice growing stronger. "It's the most advanced thing in the universe, and it can't be taken away by force. It can only be given up. Some of you have forgotten what it feels like to be free. But I promise you, it's still there, inside every one of you." Warcast Veltar moved toward Jake with his weapon raised. "Enough words from this inferior being." "You're afraid of words?" Jake asked. "From a primitive creature. That tells me everything I need to know about how strong your empire really is." That was the signal. In the holding cells, Tony Garcia and his team moved into action. Sue Martinez overloaded the power grid in their section. Sparks flew from crystal walls as the lights went out. In the confusion, the humans broke free. Sue had found the weak points in their crystal prison. Don Foster reached the communication control room, where Nina Bell was already working on the broadcast equipment. "Do it now," Nina said. "I've got control of their entire network." Dan's fingers flew over the alien controls. He had studied the frequencies that Dr. Adams identified. Now he broadcast them through every communication device in the Zephyr Empire. The effect was immediate. In the execution chamber, the crystal guards stumbled as their internal connections were disrupted. Archon Zixahal's blazing light flickered like a candle in the wind. But more importantly, Jake's words were being heard across the Empire. On the prison world of Kethmara, the lizard-like Vorthok stopped their work and looked up at the speakers. In the mining stations of the outer spiral, the insect creatures called Chithari put down their tools and remembered what it felt like to be angry. Jake grabbed the fallen weapon from a crystal guard. "This is just the beginning," he said to the watching Empire. "Freedom is coming to every world, every species. You can join us, or you can get out of our way." The rebellion had begun. The crystal guards in the execution chamber moved like drunken giants. Dan Foster's sound weapon had disrupted their connection to each other, and they stumbled around confused and angry. Captain Jake Morrison grabbed Amy Scott's hand and pulled her toward the nearest exit. This way he shouted over the noise of breaking crystal and alien screams. Warcast Veltar tried to follow them, but his tall crystal body swayed back and forth. The frequency attack had hit him harder than the smaller guards. Blue light flickered inside his transparent skin like lightning trapped in a bottle. In the communication control room, Nina Bell watched her screens with amazement. "Captain, it's working. The whole Empire is going crazy." Her displays showed reports from across the Zephyrian Empire. On distant worlds, enslaved species were fighting back. The Vorthok had taken control of 3 prison camps on Kethmara. The Chithari had turned their mining equipment into weapons and were attacking their crystal overseers. Even species that humans had never heard of were joining the rebellion. "How long can we keep this up?" asked Dan Foster. His hands moved across the alien controls, adjusting the frequencies to cause maximum disruption. "Not long," Sue Martinez called from her position at the power systems. "They're trying to shut down the communication network. I can hold them off for maybe an hour." Pete Collins and Tony Garcia burst into the room with the rest of the freed crew. Pete was bleeding from a cut on his forehead, and Tony carried an alien weapon in each hand. "We need to get back to our ship," Pete said. "The quantum drive is our only way out of here." "What about the others?" Jake asked. "Dr. Johnson and the prisoners they took." "Already freed," Tony said with a grin. "Turns out crystal guards can't fight very well when they can't coordinate with each other." Dr. Lucy Adams ran up to Jake, her eyes bright with excitement. "Captain, I figured out why the frequency attack works so well. The Zephyrians don't just use crystal technology. They are crystal technology. Their entire species is one big network. When we disrupt the network, we disrupt them. Can we use that? Jake asked. Maybe, Lucy said. If we could get to their central communication hub on their capital world, we could broadcast the disruption frequency to every Zephyrian in the Empire at the same time. Amy shook her head. That's suicide. Their capital world has thousands of ships defending it. Not anymore, Nina said, pointing at her screens. Look at this. Half their fleet can't function properly. Ships are crashing into each other because they can't coordinate. The other half are being attacked by rebels on their own worlds. Jake looked at the chaos on Nina's displays. The mighty Zephyrian Empire was tearing itself apart. But he knew it wouldn't last. Eventually, they would adapt to the frequency attack or find a way to stop it. The rebellion needed a permanent victory. How far is their capital world? He asked. Helen Woods. Helen checked her navigation computer. 2 days at maximum speed. Can the Aurora's Dawn make it through their defenses? Jake asked Pete. If we push the quantum drive past safe limits, maybe, Pete said. But we might not survive the trip. Dr. Carl Johnson spoke up. The old doctor looked tired, but determined. Captain, even if we succeed, what happens to all the enslaved species? They're fighting for freedom because of what you said. If we run away now, they'll be crushed. Jake felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. 200 humans under his command, and millions of aliens looking to them for hope. It should have been an easy choice, save his own people and go home. But Jake had seen the dead look in the eyes of the enslaved aliens. He had heard the hope in their voices when they started fighting back. What do you think? He asked Amy. His first officer was quiet for a moment. I think we came out here to explore and make contact with new life. Well, we've made contact. The question is, what kind of neighbors do we want to be? Around the room, the crew of the Auroras, Dawn nodded. They were scared, but they were also angry. They had seen what the Zephyrian Empire did to other species. They had felt what it was like to be helpless prisoners. All right, Jake said. We go to their capital world. But first, we send a message home. Nina worked quickly to set up a communication link to Earth. It would take the signal months to reach human space, but at least Earth would know what had happened to them. This is Captain Jake Morrison, of the Aurora's Dawn, Jake said into the recorder. We have made contact with a hostile alien empire, 50,000 light-years from Earth. We are going to try to stop them from expanding toward human space. If we don't make it back, tell our families we died trying to make the galaxy a safer place. The crew ran through the crystal corridors of the alien station. Behind them, more guards were coming, these ones wearing special equipment that protected them from the frequency attack. Tony Garcia and his security team held them off, while the others reached the docking bay, where the Aurora's Dawn waited. Get us out of here, Jake ordered, as they reached the bridge. Pete pushed the quantum drive harder than it had ever been pushed before. The ship jumped away from the crystal station just as enemy ships arrived to destroy it. But Jake knew they weren't running away. They were running toward the biggest fight of their lives. On the main screen, Jake could see the chaos spreading across the Zephyrian Empire. Rebel forces were winning battles on dozens of worlds. But in the center of the Empire, around the capital, world of Zeftorius, thousands of crystal ships were gathering for a final battle. 2 days, Jake said to himself. 2 days to end an empire, or die trying. The Aurora's Dawn flew through space, toward its destiny, carrying the hopes of countless enslaved beings, and the determination of 200 humans who refused to bow down to tyranny. The capital world of Zeftorius hung in space like a giant crystal ball. It was beautiful and terrible, covered in cities that sparkled like diamonds under the light of 3 suns. Captain Jake Morrison watched it grow larger on the main screen. as the Aurora's dawn approached at maximum speed. "How many ships?" he asked. 8,000, said Lisa Baker from her science station. "Maybe more. They're forming up in defensive lines around the planet." Pete Collins looked up from his engineering station, sweat dripping from his face. "Captain, the quantum drive is at 120% power. Any higher and we'll blow ourselves up." "How much higher do we need to go?" Jake asked. "To punch through their defenses and reach the planet. 150%. Minimum." Amy Scott shook her head. "The ship won't survive that kind of stress." "Maybe it doesn't have to," said Sue Martinez. "If we can get close enough to their central communication hub, we only need to survive long enough to broadcast the frequency." Dr. Lucy Adams worked at her station, studying the Zephyrian fleet through the ship's sensors. "Captain, I'm seeing something strange. About half their ships are dark. No power, no movement." "The frequency attack is still working," said Don Foster, "but they're adapting. The ships that are still active have some kind of shielding." Nina Bell listened to the alien radio traffic. "They're calling for all available ships to defend the capital, and they know we're coming." Warcast Veltar is leading the defense fleet. Jake remembered the tall crystal warrior who had captured them. Veltar would not make the same mistakes twice. This time, he would be ready for human tricks. "Incoming transmission," said Rick Torres. "It's from the planet." "Put it on screen," Jake ordered. The face that appeared was the most alien yet. This crystal being was ancient, with veins of gold running through transparent skin. Light moved inside the creature like slow fire, and when it spoke, the voice was like mountains falling. "I am Overmind Zeph Kalar, supreme leader of the Zephyrian Empire," the ancient being said. "You have caused great damage with your primitive tricks, but it ends here. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick." "No," Jake said simply. "We're here to finish what we started." The Overmind's golden veins flared brighter. "You are one small ship against the might of the Empire. You cannot win." "We don't have to win," Jake said. "We just have to give everyone else the chance to be free." The transmission ended. Around them, the Zephyrian fleet began to move. 8,000 crystal ships, each one bigger and more powerful than the Aurora's dawn. They came in perfect formation, their weapons charging with deadly light. "All hands, battle stations," Jake ordered. "This is it." The first wave of enemy ships opened fire. The Aurora's dawn shook as energy beams struck its shields. Pete pushed the quantum drive to 130%, and the ship jumped forward like a bullet. "Return fire," Jake ordered. Tony Garcia had turned the ship's communication array into a weapon. Sound waves blasted from the Aurora's dawn, disrupting the crystal ships in their path. Some of them spun out of control, others crashed into each other as their coordination failed, but there were too many. For every ship they disabled, 10 more took its place. The Aurora's dawn flew through a storm of enemy fire, its shields weakening with every hit. "We're not going to make it," said Helen Woods as she tried to navigate through the enemy fleet. Double quotes. "Yes, we are," Jake said. "Pete, give me 150% power." "Captain, that will destroy the ship," Pete protested. "Do it," Jake ordered. Pete's hands moved across his controls. The quantum drive screamed as it was pushed beyond all safe limits. The Aurora's dawn shot forward faster than it had ever moved before. Behind them, explosions marked the ships that couldn't get out of the way in time. They broke through the enemy lines and dove toward the planet. The crystal cities grew larger on the screen. At the center of the main continent, Jake could see a tower that reached up toward space. It pulsed with light like a giant heartbeat. "That's it," said Dr. Adams. "The central communication hub. If we can broadcast the frequency from there, it will reach every Zephyrian in the Empire." The ship shook harder as the quantum drive began to tear itself apart. Warning lights flashed red across every station, but they were almost there. Warcast Veltar's ship appeared in front of them, a crystal needle filled with angry light. "You will not reach the surface," his voice boomed through the aurora's dawn. "Watch us," Jake said. The two ships fired at each other at point-blank range. The aurora's dawn's hull cracked, and air began to leak out through the holes. But Veltar's ship was also damaged, its crystal structure fractured by Don Foster's sound weapon. "Hull breach on decks 3 and 4, reported Sue Martinez. "We're losing atmosphere." "How long until we reach the communication hub?" Jake asked. 2 minutes, said Helen. "We don't have 2 minutes, said Pete. "The quantum drive is going to explode." Jake made the hardest decision of his life. All hands, abandon ship. "Get to the escape pods." "We're not leaving you," said Amy. "That's in order," Jake said. "Nina, Dan, get to the communication hub. Broadcast the frequency. The rest of you, get out of here." "Captain," said Dr. Johnson, "it's been an honor." One by one, his crew left the bridge. Only Jake remained, keeping the ship on course as the quantum drive counted down to destruction. Through the view screen, he could see the communication tower getting closer. In the escape pods, Nina Bell and Dan Foster reached the crystal tower first. The building was huge, filled with aliens trying to stop the frequency broadcast. But the Zephyrians were confused and disorganized. Their network was falling apart. Don connected his equipment to the tower's communication array. "Ready?" he told Nina. "Do it," she said. The frequency blast went out across the Empire. Every Zephyrian on every world felt it at the same time. Their crystal bodies flickered and went dark as their ancient network finally collapsed. The empire that had ruled for 1,000 years fell in a single moment. On the aurora's dawn, Jake smiled as he saw the enemy ships go dark around him. The quantum drive exploded, taking the ship and its captain with it. But the mission was complete. In the escape pods, the human crew watched as the crystal cities below went silent. Across the empire, enslaved species were free at last. The Vorthok, the Chithari, and dozens of other races began building new lives without crystal masters. Months later, rescue ships from Earth arrived to find the crew of the Aurora's Dawn living among their new alien friends. They had kept their promise to Captain Morrison. The galaxy was a safer place. The Phantom ship had appeared from nowhere and destroyed an empire overnight. But more importantly, it had shown the universe that freedom was worth fighting for, no matter the cost. And in the years that followed, when humans and aliens worked together to explore the stars, they always remembered the crew of the Auroras, Dawn and the captain who chose to save strangers rather than himself. The empire was gone, freedom had won, and the galaxy would never be the same.